Yeah,
And you are live.
I don't know, I just get through with this work orders that he's got going on.
I'd like to call the finance committee to order August 3rd at 10:30. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Can I have a motion for that? Frazier and
63 Riviera. I want to take the driveway now.
does anybody have any discussion, any corrections for the minutes? No? Okay, then, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to open the meeting for privilege of the floor and public comment. Anybody have any discussion they'd like to have? Okay. And we'll go on to the action agenda. The first item is the request for transfers of funds as attached for committee approval. First one is to move $3,000 from the IT technology department's hospitalization to health insurance cost reimbursement code. Second one is to move $2,500 from planning salaries full-time to planning salaries part-time. The third one is to move $50,000 from salaries regular to salaries overtime. And to move $1,500 from unemployment insurance to health insurance cost reimbursement. And the fourth one is pulled from this agenda, and it will be discussed next month. Any discussion or comments? Okay, all in favor? Oh, Tom.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Second.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
2A is the journal report of transfers approved by the county administrator staff for 2023.
If there were any questions, most of them are pretty straightforward. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 2B is a request to move $102,468 from the vehicle reserve budget code into the sheriff automotive equipment reserve to cover the cost of purchasing a marine vessel. These kind of go 2B and 2C go together. If you recall, when we had the discussion, half of the funding for the marine vessel will be paid by the state. So 2C shows that amend the Warren County budget in the amount of $102,468 to recognize that anticipated state funding will come for that marine vessel. So taking basically half of the cost out of the vehicle reserve and moving it into the sheriff, and then the other half will be paid by the state.
I'll move that. $104,000 vote.
Moved by Supervisor Thomas and Supervisor Frazier. This is for B and C. You need to vote on that. I'm sorry.
So item 2D.
Any questions or discussion on items B and C? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item D.
Okay, item D. So item D is the request to move funds from the general fund, unappropriated surplus, 143,782.25. And then you also see some from the county road fund and also from the machinery fund This is to pay for the 2.5% increase that the board voted, it was resolution 368 of 2023, voted on at the last board meeting. Now, when I discussed this with you, I said, we basically expect about $2 million of pay money to come back at the end of the year and go back to the general fund for the vacancies. And if you look at the personnel, for example, we have all the list of vacancies. We could have gone into those budget codes and pulled money out of those based on vacancies that we know pretty sure we're not going to fill this year to do this, but we thought it was cleaner just to take it out of the general fund so you can see the total amount. This includes the fringe, and that money will go back in at the end of the year.
Okay with that, Frank? Well, if you're not, let me know.
I need a motion first to bring that to the floor.
I'll make the motion.
No, support.
Second,
I'll second it.
Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you, Chairman. So we have a 2.5% going on now, then 2/3 through the year. And then January, it's going to be another 2.5%.
That'll be decided in the budget process this year, if there's an additional.
Possibly. So if we don't do it in the budget, there's a possibility a year from now, we'll be back in the same boat, or we just did that in the previous meeting, that there will be no out of budget bargaining.
It's my intent, thank you for the question. Our intent is to not bring pay increases up mid-year anymore. And the other thing we would do, so this is for the non-bargaining unit.
Right.
What we've done in the past a lot of times, because we also will be entering negotiations with CSEA for a new contract this year. It may be decided, like what happened this year with the police and the police supervisors. They were decided after the beginning of the year, but then made retroactive. I think in the future, we'd like to go forward and make a decision on the non-bargaining unit personnel, if we're going to consider an increase and not wait for a decision on CSEA if that decision isn't reached on the 1st of January, if that makes sense. I don't want to get into a position anymore where we're having to have these discussions mid-year. So that would be our preference, but we haven't made a decision yet on any increases for anyone outside of the bargaining units in January.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on item D? Call question, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, so item 2E, there's a mistake in this. It should read request to provide the county administrator authority to transfer funds within departmental budgets upon consultation with personnel administration and higher ed and finance committee chairs. When circumstances arise where a shortage in salary codes occur upon hiring of new employees, and basically, if the money exists in the budget, we'd like to be able to make those determinations without having to come forward for a resolution. We're trying to cut down on the number of resolutions we have. And if the money's in the budget and it's available, I don't think that's, now that I think about it, that's not what we were wanting. So what we wanted was what I really wanted to do was preclude us having to have a resolution like you voted on earlier, where we had to move $2,500 from a full-time salary code to a part-time salary code in the planning department. So if the planning department has money in their codes to cover those types of things, we'd like to be able to just talk to the chairman and say, let's move that and let's not bring that forward for a resolution for the full board discussion. That makes sense.
I just,
Does anybody want to bring that motion to the floor? Bring it up. Thank you. Any further discussion? Supervisor Beatty?
yeah, I understand the intent. John, I'm not sure that I'm gonna go along with it though, only because I know it gets down on some of the resolutions we need and so forth, and I get all that. But I always like the full committee to be aware of those type of situations and have a full committee, not just a committee chairman approve it. You know, you've got down just the personnel committee chairman would approve that. And I believe you also put down finance chairman. I'd rather have it go to the full committee for those things personally, so I'm.
Okay, now with.
But no, it's not going to the full committee,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
going just to the chairman.
Let me-
to approve it.
That would be just to have the permission to make the movement. Where you would see it is on the report of journal transfers. That is part of the full committee that we bring forward to the full committee. So it would appear on the report of transfers list. It just wouldn't have to go forward for a resolution for the full board.
To be honest with you, I don't think a lot of people read full journal transfers up, you know, in fact, I'd be shocked if even two people read it, so, you know, in detail. So I just shouldn't keep it the way we're doing it now, John, nothing against you, I just rather do it the way we're doing it now, I think that works. And it brings enough people and eyes on it with the committee, so I'm all no on that.
Good question. Does this request involve changing codes that are identical, but you're maybe going out to the third decimal, like you're still in the same
In
area?
the same.
So you're in the same code, you're just breaking it out to like the third decimal number.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Can I,
Oh, sorry.
can I request something? If this moves forward, we're talking about salaries here. Could I make a recommendation if we do that for salaries, that we do that for fringe benefits within the same department code? And I ask that because when we budget for fringe benefits, health insurance is a great example. When we budget for health insurance, you have hospitalization and you have health reimbursement account. When people, we won't know when we do budget, where people, what coverage someone's gonna select. It would be from hospitalization, like a standard, we use Highmark now, to a high deductible. The money, it's just in the wrong bucket, and that's what you'll see if you look at the third request here is to move money from a code to the health insurance cost reimbursement bucket. So I would just like to add salaries or the term on that. If we're gonna move forward with it.
Right, because a
Just so we
change
don't-
in one would cause a change in the second one anyway.
Right,
wouldn't it? Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So we might have to move.
All right, so with this discussion, I think what I'd like to do is withdraw this until we do a little bit more background work on it.
Okay.
That make, could I,
There's a motion on the floor.
there's a motion, so someone should.
So I'll,
This is for you, Mr. Johnson.
yeah, okay, so I need a motion to withdraw the motion.
You don't need a motion, they did a good job.
Oh, is that okay with you to withdraw? Item 3 is a discussion from the county treasurer.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to kind of give a brief history of the budget analysis report, the budget performance report. As I'm looking here, I think there's only 2 people maybe in this room that were here when that was originated. This all started back at the end of the 2000s when the housing and the mortgage collapse happened. And as a result of that, there was kind of a financial collapse here at the county. And unfortunately, at the time, the treasurer then had never given the board any information about where the budget was, or anything else, where the unencumbered fund balance was, which was at $3.5 million, and the county ended up having to borrow money to make payroll. So as a result of that, the board requested that the treasurer's office create a budget analysis and a budget performance report to send out to all the supervisors every month. And that's what's been going on. The analysis report is something that we, in my office, we kind of look at certain things that we see that shouldn't be maybe doing, or that we have problems with, and report it there. We also try to keep everybody up to date on the revenues, and where we are with debt service, and those type of things with this report. And then, of course, then the other part of this, which is kind of why I'm bringing this here, is the performance report, which is 95 pages long, and it lists every department, every line item, and where they are in relation to their budget. And what I didn't realize that we were putting, well, I knew we were putting this out there every month on the webpage, but I didn't realize that the state controller's office was looking at it. Which is causing us some problems, because basically they're saying in instances where departments are going over budget, that's not legal. So we're gonna have to make some corrections here somehow to get the departments to toe the mark when they start going over their budget, to come back to their committee and say, okay, I need to amend the budget. I need more money, I need to keep money, whatever the case is. But that's kind of why I was bringing it here. And also, I mean, we send this out every month, and we get some responses from some of the supervisors, some of them don't. But if there are any questions, concerns, anything else, Rob and I are both, available most of the time to ask questions and respond to. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we're going to have to, and this is going to have to work with John on this, to see what we can do about getting some. And the big one, I'll be blunt about it, is the overtime in the sheriff's office is so high. I mean, that's they're really coming down hard on us as to why we're about. So those are the areas addressing. I've already, everybody knows I'm leaving at the end of the year. I've already discussed this with the person who will be coming in behind me, so that they at least have a background on it, and they'll understand. She will understand where we're headed with it. She wants to make changes, that's up to her, but at least she'll have the background. Questions, concerns?
So a department goes over their budget for the month. Now, obviously, they can't ask while they're doing it. So the following month that they've exceeded their budget, they have to ask for the appropriate funds to be shifted into their department to cover that overage. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
basically, what's happening now is all the departments are waiting till the end of the year to
Right.
try to address these problems. And what the controller and what I personally feel is it needs to be addressed during the year as we go along. That gives us a better idea at the end of the year where we're actually at, rather than waiting to the end of the year to move everything around and try to correct these things. And in several cases, we've had to go into the next year to try to get departments to settle out these budget items. So we're not saying, if you're going over this month, you got to run to your committee, but let's not let it drag out till the end of the year.
So the state's saying that they can't legally go over the budget without the authorization and the correct transfers from the full county, from the board. So
But I mean,
to me,
they're-
that's kind of serious.
But they understand that, you have to have some leeway here. It can't be done immediately,
Right.
okay?
So should we put in your, thought process, should we put it has to be addressed within a 2-month period. If there's
Well,
overage or,
I hate to say that because it depends. I mean, there's so many different moving factors with a lot of this stuff. Sometimes you have to look at it because sometimes you're over budget because the revenue stream hasn't caught up with the expense. So you gotta be careful with those type of things too. And that, but when you get into a couple $100,000 in overtime that you're over budget, you know, then we gotta deal with that.
yeah. Question for the treasurer. In reference to the overage or overtime, is there any offset with vacancies that would offset that?
There is, and I mean, that's something that the department head needs to analyze and come forward with and say, look, okay, I'm over here, but we've got this, we've got this, we've got that, and I need X to offset what we're doing.
On a town level, I can't overdraw my payroll without making a transfer on any account. I can't pay a bill without making a transfer. So why isn't the county, when you incur overtime, why isn't the department head making a transfer into a 0.1?
It's a good question. I've asked that myself. And
I mean, that should, for any code. I always thought, and you know, I'm not an accountant, but you had to make the transfer before you could pay a bill. And that's why we do some of these transfers we do every month. And then that could be a reason why the administrator and those department heads need to get together and say to whatever department is, Department X, you're overrunning your payroll, you need to transfer money in immediately to do that, rather than show up.
I would like to see that. Unfortunately, it's not happening. So, and I don't have the authority. I mean, I can call the department head and say, can you please? But I don't have the authority to say, you have to do this.
I thought you had to do it.
Okay, well, I agree with you. Because if we're behind in overtime, I mean, that money's coming out of the general fund to cover that.
Right, or transferring within payroll codes, he could do that, right?
Yes.
And
So he could transfer from vacancies over to overtime to offset them.
Yeah, in a situation like that, yes, yep. But those are the things that need to be done on a regular basis, not waiting to the end of the year. Because then we're scrambling to try, you know, then they come in. And you've seen it before, the November meeting, I mean, just gets jammed with all of these requests to cover these budget items.
Right.
And then we end up doing January still, because some of the departments don't get it in time. And it makes for that carryover makes for an accounting mess for us. Because you're not supposed to cross years.
Right.
Well, I know at the town level, if you're in the negative, your next meeting, you've got to bring that back into at least equal or positive number. And I believe John would have something to say.
No,
about
that's,
that.
that's really, and it wasn't worded the way it needed to be worded in my, my point, but that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to have the ability to shift money to cover it. So if you're going over in overtime in a department and you have money in full-time salaries that you're not using, that we could shift to cover that and not have to wait to come forward to a board meeting or bring it forward in November, things like that. So
And the department.
I could,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what I could do is come up with a way to reword this a little bit and bring it back to the committee next month. Maybe that'll address some of these issues.
Are department heads authorized to even be able to make those type of transfers, or do they just request them through you? How would that work?
You have to request them to the board.
Request.
To the
The
board?
board has the authority to make transfers and salaries, department heads do not. That's why we bring the transfers of funds here.
With what he's proposing here, would that enable them to at least stay in the codes to?
That would allow the county administrator and the
The
committee
chairs of
chair
the two
to
committees.
make those transfers. Right now, department heads can transfer between our 0.2s and 0.4s, for like supply lines, things like that. We're not allowed to touch salary codes or benefit code or fringe.
Mhm.
So this would allow the county administrator to make those without having to bring everything to the board.
And that's why you labeled it as for salaries, okay? Okay. Supervisor McGowan?
Thank you, Chairman. It does make sense, and I do agree with our treasurer. When we do have a department that goes really, way over budget. When you're talking excessive, quite a few $100,000. That needs to be addressed. And we need to know what's going on, too. So if this is a policy that the administrator would like to do, to have it, to be able to move it, but I believe we have the responsibilities of the supervisors to be aware, of this is going on, and, on a monthly thing, I believe it should be a monthly thing. We've all been brought up to be accountable for our money every month, as we live our lives, we don't have the money. We don't go shopping or go to the movies, or, we watch what we do at the grocery store. So it's just accountability, but also it's our responsibility to make sure that we're on top of that. And if we're going to transfer unused funds, then it needs to come out, especially when we're talking a lot of money in overruns. Thank you.
Yeah, and can I just say, there's multiple ways to deal with this and correct this, depending on the size of the department and what the problem is. So that's why I don't want to say set rules going across the board, because that may affect Kevin to the point where it just ties his hands and he can't do anything. The same with the sheriff or anybody else, but the perception needs to be made to the department heads that once you get into these situations, you need to come forward as soon as you can to correct the problems.
I just want to add on it, with vacant positions, I understand to be able to take money from that vacant positions and cover that overtime cost. And my department's not full right now. I think I heard Mike Wild tell you earlier in personnel that I'm hurting for staff, and I am. The fact of the matter though is that if I have a full staff, I don't have that vacancy money. And if I don't have that vacancy money, if I have to do overtime to plow roads, I have to do overtime. And I can't guarantee every year how much snow is gonna fall out there. So it's a hard thing for me I'm more than willing, and Mike knows this, on a quarterly basis or something, and Betsy and I have been talking about it, to come in and make those transfers to make that whole. But if I'm fully staffed and I get a boatload of snowstorms in December, I can't tell you that I can't go overtime, or then I'm gonna shut down roads that I can't plow. The only other thing I want to add on is a couple of the other things that we've seen is like medical. I had somebody that was working up on the farm that didn't have the family plan. We got somebody new that came in, or they switched to a family plan. Rob gives us those numbers for budget. Those numbers are over. And I don't know that until I see their budget analysis. It's not something that because I don't budget those numbers. I get them from the treasurer's office. So.
Yeah, and then that's why I'm saying it more or less has to be kind of a department by department basis. I mean, like with Kevin, okay, in April, he knows how much overtime he's had to spend for plowing. All right, and he knows at that point whether he's in good shape or not. So in April, he comes in, I'm just using this as an example, okay? In April, he comes in and says, okay, I've got to make some adjustments because of the plowing overtime went higher than we anticipated. That's what we're talking about, not waiting until December of that year to try to fix the problem.
It's incumbent upon us though, to get the budgets right, try to get the budgets right, and I think that's one thing we struggle with in jail year after year because of the vacancies over there, but I could see a double-edged sword. If we do make the transfers on a monthly basis, it's gonna shoot up your amount spent for overtime. You're gonna have to look at your budget to see, I think the report is good, but you can always make a transfer, but keep the report to budget, right? That's what you gotta do.
But I mean, it's not just overtime. There's other areas in the budget. If you look through that performance report where where individual departments are going over in certain areas. And they know when like in equipment, or not equipment, but office supplies, okay? Somebody goes over because now they've got to buy something that they weren't anticipating during the year, okay? We're asking that you don't wait until December, when you know about it in June, you take care of it in July. That's what we're saying.
Have some idea of how you're gonna cover it.
Yeah.
Chair, can I just to make sure the record's clear and everyone's on the same page and the public's on the same page? If I could ask just the treasurer to clarify, are all of these budgets going over their budgeted allotment as a department?
No,
Okay, I wanted to make sure that was clear and everybody understood that. It's the individual lines within a department's budget that you're addressing only,
correct.
not the total amount. They're not exceeding, no departments are exceeding their budgeted amount unless they're coming here first for additional funding.
Not 100%.
Okay,
but-
but there might be,
The vast majority of the departments, that is correct, yes.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is item number 4, referral from the County Facilities Committee. And that is a request to establish a capital project or a capital reserve. Do I have someone who wants to bring that motion to the floor? Frank first. Do I have a second? A second. This is to replace a 4-box PAPI runway 1-19 at the Floyd Bennett Airport in the amount of $271,000. Would be a capital project. Is there any discussion? Okay, then.
Those are those are the lights
Right.
at the side of the runway.
Yeah, they're precision approach lights and they need replacement. So this is just a project through FAA. The funding will come through FAA and the state, and there's a local match as well. We have the local match in our capital reserve project, so.
Any further discussion, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay. 5A is from the Health Services Committee to request to amend the Warren County budget for 2023 in the amount of $134,054 to reflect the receipt of funding from New York State Office of Mental Health and New York State Office of Addiction Services to cover the cost of 4% cost of living adjustment included in the New York State budget for programs sponsored by these agencies. I'll bring that to the floor. Okay. Second, Supervisor Beatty. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Item 5B is a request to appropriate funds in the amount of $300,000 from Budget Code A909, General Fund Unappropriated Surplus, to Budget Code A4390435, Psychiatric Expense Criminal, to cover the cost of court-ordered New York State CPL 730 competency examination and restoration expenses through the remainder of the year. I'll bring that to the floor, okay? Second, okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on that item? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, passes. Okay, next is 5C. Request to amend the Warren County budget for 2023 in the amount of $35,800 to reflect receipt for COVID funding to cover the cost of vaccination of homebound seniors in Warren and Hamilton County. Linda Frazier on first, to bring it to the floor. Is there a second? Vice Beatty. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. 5D. Request to amend the Warren County budget of 2023 in the amount of $3,229.50 to reflect the receipt of funding from New York State Department of Health for the New York State Healthcare Worker Bonus Program. Supervisor Beatty on first, and Frazier for the second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
What's this next one from Dennis?
Number 6 was removed, so we'll move
Okay.
to item 7.
These castles.
7 is a referral from the Occupancy Tax Coordination Committee to request to appropriate funds in the amount of $150,000 from Budget Code A 881 Reserve Occupancy Tax to Budget Code A 6417.0002 Tourism Occupancy Tax Special Events to provide funding for Ice Castle's winter event. For any discussion? Vice Baby?
Yeah, we have a process that you can apply for OCTAX money. We give up grants up to $50,000. And then we have a couple of anomalies, anomalies like the light show and so forth. So I'm confused on this. So I don't remember just writing a check out of OCTAX for $150,000 for ice castles. Now, I do remember year one that we gave them $50,000 in OCTAX money. And they applied and filled out the application and so forth. So what's this? John, do you know?
Winter event.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe we paid ice castles in the past.
First year we did. We gave them 50,000 first year.
2000 the first year. They didn't ask for any money last year.
Correct.
This is not really ice castles. This is the new version of ice castles. They're calling it Winter Realm. We should probably reflect that. But yeah, this went through the occupancy tax committee and. they
Yep,
approved it.
I understand it went through the committee and everything, but still. It's odd. It's not anywhere close to the norm. We don't do this. So. I guess we're saying. Different events can just ask for anything above the 50,000 threshold, which we established. We all agreed to. And it's, so I'm gonna have to vote against this because this doesn't seem right to me. Something doesn't seem copacetic to me.
I believe that the extra amount was for the equipment that would keep the ice rink frozen, right? It made it winter.
Yeah, they're adding an ice rink and ice sculptures and an ice bar and one of those ice bars. Yeah. And as I understand it, this is not paid up front. This is to be paid at the end of the event. And I believe it's up to this amount. They'll submit a request for funding.
Yeah, the OCTAX committee really had a very comprehensive discussion about this. And it was articulated and justified, and it was referenced by the administrator. It's not so much weather dependent anymore, right? If we have a weather like we had last year, it's a bad season. So this helps prevent that. And again, the committee was 100% in favor of it.
That doesn't mean anything to me. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I was there and also being of the mindset I am in self-taught engineering, I guess you'd say. What the Ice Castle is bringing in is a few changes on their venue to one, prolong. They're hoping to prolong the opening of the Ice Castle by changing a few things and with the ice rink and bringing in a system to help keep things cooler on the warm weather. So tourism did bet it pretty good, and I believe with a combination of this and the light show, it's really going to be a great benefit. So I'm happy to move that 150 when that time comes.
Yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable if they'd gone through the application process. And said, hey, I know your limit is 50,000. This year, we're going to be requesting 150,000. I don't see an application attached here. I don't see any of that. Now, I understand fully they're changing their format. Okay, but it looks like to me, they're asking the octax to fund their new format change. And I probably could get along with it if they had gone through the normal process and so forth. But when I see.
They did.
I have the whole
Is
application.
the application there?
Yeah,
Well,
not here, but it
it
was
was
at that meeting, it was.
Okay, but it's not
The
attached
Octax
here.
Committee.
So it's not attached here. So you're saying that they look to exceed the 50,000 maximum grant to 150,000. And for whatever reason, I understand. I know that I've talked in depth with Sam Luciano, and he knows all about the ice castles too and stuff. So I'm aware of all the detail and so forth. They go from not requesting any last year to requesting 150,000 this year and 50,000 the first year, as we all know. So I don't know. I'm torn on this one because it just seems like a large amount, that I'm not comfortable with over the exceeding the 50,000 that are
Did you
normal.
have something you wanted to add that might clarify that for him?
Just to clarify, somebody that's not, they did submit an application, they did come to the meeting and speak to us on it. And we all realize that's the right thing to do, because they bring in a lot of money. This is gonna, in case we get warm weather, keep the outer part of that festival thing, they have igloos and things like that, people work with it, keep it cool. So, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and we have broken the octax exceeding, I mean, we give Glenn's all 7% of our portion, Glenn falls a lot of money for repair for the thing, that all comes out of octax, so we have exceeded the 50, but I believe, and what he's saying, we should really finalize that this coming year, we're gonna try to change a lot of those things, to make sure that we're gonna stay at one or be able to change. This is a necessity, and we're bringing a lot of hundred of that money. And, we're trying to keep both down open in the winter. And the lights going and the path. And I could say 95% people get a lot of money on the back in occupancy by the end of the year, next year.
Chairman Garrity?
Yeah, my understanding, I wasn't at the meeting, but this is to augment the ice castles program that they put on. They want to stay in Lake George. They want to augment coming to Lake George and adding this to their ice castle. That's correct. And then they're going to put igloos and a skating rink and this was just to augment because they're struggling with the weather just to do the ice castle. So that's the way I understood, and they did come to committee and they started discussing it and the pros and cons of this, and this is not weather dependent, it's my understanding, and they could run longer, and they do attract quite a few people, even with the bad weather they've had. This event in Lake George seems to attract more people than the other regions across the country they have. So I think it's a good thing to do. I understand Mr. Beatty's concerns about the application, though I do believe they made an application. I'm all for making out applications too,
Mhm.
you know.
They did.
So,
The main purpose for the additional funding was to keep it not so dependent on the weather, so that it can be a longer term event. And I believe at the meeting, and you were there, the cost of the equipment just to keep the ice rink frozen was like $100,000 just by itself. So.
Yeah, I've been a huge supporter of that. In fact, I was on the committee or the group to get them here. Was up to Lake George Holiday Inn talking with all the owners and, so I'm a huge supporter of theirs. And I'll probably vote for this. I just don't want to, I don't want to get in the habit of seeing $150,000, $200,000 requests. Because it becomes a slippery slope in that regard too. So I'll go along with this because I'm, like I said, from day one, I've been a huge supporter. And I always thought that ice castles would be a difference maker. And I understand the weather related situation. Again, I've talked in depth to some key people with ice castles. So, and they're trying to transition with the equipment to making that weather related. I get all that. So I'll vote for this, and I just don't want this to be the norm of
Maybe.
asking out of.
Maybe in the occupancy tax committee, maybe there's a way that it could be structured for long-term events that are gonna go on for a weekend opposed to something that's gonna go on for months. We might need to change that.
yeah, I think the tourism or Oxitex, I think, believe their new tourism directors gonna try to look at the whole scenario, how Oxitex set up and maybe take some tweaks to it. Maybe to be able to make it a little cleaner for the committee and for the county as going forward. She's doing some work on it, correct?
That's correct.
Mhm. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, well, the question then, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Move on to referral from the Public Works Committee. 8A and B are requests to increase capital projects. Do you think we could do them together or should they be kept separate?
Can we lump them together?
Can we?
I'll do that if we can. Can we, Amanda? I'd like to lump A, B, and C together. That's okay.
Second, thank you. Did you want to address any of this?
I don't think so. They're pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I believe the first two are increased capital projects, and these are just basically for project closeouts. One of them is for Palisades Road, and the other one is for the South Johnsburg Road over Mill Creek. This is the resolutions that we would have and the supplemental funding from DOT and Federal Highway. So there is the local match. We have the local match already in our budget for these. So it's just to do the supplemental agreements with DOT. And the last one, C, that is to take some money out of the motor or reserve motor fuel systems to do some repairs to some of the fuel pumps.
I'll move that.
Good with that? Any discussion? No? All in favor, say aye for 8A, B, and C.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Item. Says 9.3.
Yeah, these are all.
Oh, they're from the prior number.
They're like all amending to the organizations where changes in salary, so the finance. Okay, personnel.
Okay, so should I? Okay, we'll be up to the board then. So all of these items were already approved in personnel. Okay. Is there any objection to combining them? I want to hear any of them separately?
Motion.
Yes? Okay. Any discussion on any of items under item number 9?
They'll still come forward to the board as 3 separate.
Yeah, this is just to approve. It doesn't necessarily combine them into. the resolution. It's just to-
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Opposed?
There are no pending items for this month. So now I'll open the meeting up to privilege of the floor and public comment. If anybody wishes to speak? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
That was painless.
Let me adjourn.